Racism, as a social construct, is one that is upheld by dividing humanity up into different subsegments or races which have no real biological basis.
So the idea that we were all one big happy team called white people or the white race is nonsense. That is an identity given to those of us of European descent in the colonies. It didn't really exist as such in Europe. My great-grandfather, when he came from Russia as a Jewish immigrant in the early 1900s, he didn't know he was white till he got here. The Irish didn't know they were white until they got here, and they were essentially told, you're either going to get down with this, you're going to get down with the same people who've been oppressing you forever, right, in a colonial relationship, or you're going to continue to be marginalized. And so white identity was this, it was sort of it was like a coin of the realm.
Racism as a belief is predicated fundamentally on building up whiteness as the ideal and blackness as its antithesis. Whiteness refers to the standard that other arbitrarily decided groups are held to by the simple virtue of not being white. Understanding the ways that whiteness and the ways that society is inherently built to benefit white bodies is integral to beginning to have a deeper understanding of how race and racism operate in this society.
We must first understand that race is a system of power. It is a system designed to benefit some at the expense of others. By sheer convenience, when you need to pick a group of people who can be singled out, if they look different from another group, that's a pretty easy identifier, provided you're in the group that wins when you're setting up this system. One of the reasons why it has been so lasting is because it is very hard for Black people to no longer be Black people.
But as long as they continue to think of themselves as white first, as James Baldwin said, as long as you think you're white, there's no hope for you. He was talking to us. He was saying, as long as you buy into that as a truly meaningful category of superiority or whatever, you'll never act in solidarity with other people. And so I hope that we can begin to recognize the way and talk about the way that whiteness as a concept has really stolen, frankly, from us, the real interesting cultural heritages of the people from whence we come.
Lacking this understanding of the ways that whiteness normalizes itself, especially as a white person, makes it that much more difficult to begin to have any real nuanced conversations on the interplays of race and racism in our society.
Because what I'm asking is that, white Americans have more because of racism, but there are other groups of people in other Western democracies who have more than white Americans. And then you start to ask the question, why is it that people in other countries have free healthcare? Why is it that they have paid family leave? Why is it that they have a massive safety net? Why is it that we do not? And so I'm not really asking white Americans to be altruistic in order to be anti-racist. We're really asking people to have intelligent self-interest. Those tens of millions of Americans, white Americans who've lost their jobs as a result of this pandemic, we're not asking them to be altruistic. We're asking them to realize that if we had a different type of government with a different set of priorities, then they would be much better off right now.
As we begin to figure out how we as white people can begin to work with people of color to deconstruct ideas of race and racism, it is important that we keep a diverse and, more specifically, intersectional approach. Intersectionality refers to the understanding that there are certain people in our society who face multiple oppressions at once due to the way that power and white supremacy enforce structural forces. Intersectionality is a term coined by Kimberly Crenshaw to describe this intersection, but Crenshaw is not the first person to recognize the failures of white feminism and other movements that lack solidarity with other oppressed groups. Intersectionality holds its roots in Black feminist organizing with groups like the Combahee River Collective that use their research to build up a library of scholarship on the subject of Black feminism and the popular feminist movement's failures to recognize the specific oppression experienced by Black women. Without a firm understanding of intersectionality, it is easy to lose sight of marginalized groups like sex workers, immigrants, and Black, trans, and non-binary individuals. Groups that our society is deemed to be marginal enough to exclude from the conversation, and therefore the agency to advocate for their own lives in a world that is largely against them. This year alone, 33 trans and non-binary people have been killed, the majority of them Black or Latinx. These are their names: Dustin Parker, Nuelisa Luciano Ruiz, Yampi Mendez Arocho, Monica Diamond, Lexi, Joanna Metzger, Serena Angelique Velasquez Ramos, Leila Reyes Sanchez, Penelope Diaz Ramirez, Nina Pop, Hel J. O'Regan, Tony McDade, Dominique Remy Fells, Rhea Milton, Jane Thompson, Selena Reyes Hernandez, Brian Egypt Powers, Brayla Stone, Mercy Mack, Shaky Peters, Bree Black, Summer Taylor, Marilyn Cazares, Dior H. Ova, Keisha D. Hardy, Aha Raquel Roan Spear, Key Sam, Arian Burnett, Mia Green, Michelle Michelin Ramos Vargas, Felcia Harris, Brooklyn Dashuna, Sarah Blackwood. Had you ever heard these names before? The majority of these individuals are Black or Latinx because whiteness is predicated on the idea that says darker skin is inherently more dangerous. We must learn to confront whiteness as the structure on which racism is built and use intersectional tools to rebuild a society that is not post-racial but remains distinctly aware of our own problematic past in order to not repeat the same crimes.